Okay, welcome. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. We're going to have one of our community conversations right now. And our topic this afternoon is, what is your scale measuring? What is your scale measuring? To have this conversation, we're actually going to start with a few minutes of quieting practice, of centering practice. So I'm going to invite you to take a comfortable seat and to let yourself become a kind of sanctuary for yourself. Okay, so taking a comfortable seat, let's put one hand on the heart like this. And then you could put the second hand either in your lap, and sometimes it's nice to do the palm face up, which is a gesture of receptivity, like what might I receive from being here right now, or what might I receive from my inner wisdom or love or grace. So you can place this palm face up and this hand on the heart. And then you're welcome to close your eyes. And allow your breathing to start coming inward and downward. So the breath is not trapped up in the chest. It's deeper and more nourishing. And just start noticing the breath as it is. Don't try to coerce it or to change it. On the one hand, we welcome a deeper breath, and we do that by releasing unnecessary tension in the body and inviting there to be a deeper breath. On the other hand, we take an attitude of no coercion and no manipulation, really sincerely welcoming the breath as it is. And as you sense the breath coming and going, start sort of loosening the tendrils of attention that go outwards and direct your attention inwards. And with your hand on your heart, you can extend a quality of sort of warmth or appreciation, a quality in hunger, hope, and healing. We call it befriending, the quality of befriending yourself. Let that come into your heart from your hand. And then with your left hand palm facing up, what you can do is practice this quality again of receiving or being willing to receive whatever wisdom or insight comes to you as a result of being here. And take one more breath cycle, breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. And then bring your hands together at your heart so your palms connect in this prayer position we call Anjali Mudra. The word Anjali means to make an offering or to hold an offering in your heart that you're going to be extending. So let's put this offering in the center of the palms. Imagine offering to yourself, and let's imagine offering to yourself today, but also to younger and younger versions of yourself. Imagine offering relief from the pressures and the cycles, the challenges, the difficulties. Relief from the internalization of diet culture mentality or perfectionism or pressure. Relief from feeling breakable or fragile. At any one moment, it could all come collapsing down. At other moments, you feel triumphant, but it doesn't seem to last. So offering yourself relief from those cycles. And as you exhale, you can bow your head to your heart. And with your hands, you make a gesture like this and you offer to your younger selves. Like, if I was there for you in those younger years, I would have helped you. If my wise self today could have been there for you then, I would have offered you relief, understanding. I would have offered you something so nourishing, right? And so kind. Right, so you make that offering to your younger self, and then you may release your hands. And as you're ready to, you're welcome to open your eyes. Welcome. So as I was saying, our conversation today is about this whole sense that we're being measured by the scale. And I want to start just by talking about what is biofeedback, because a scale could be a form of biofeedback. A mirror is a form of biofeedback. These wearables that people have on their wrists are forms of biofeedback, like what is my heart rate? What is my heart rate variability? What is my temperature? A thermometer is a form of biofeedback. Our clothing is actually a form of biofeedback because when we put it on, it feels one way or the other way. But this biofeedback realm was meant to give us information for us to feel empowered by, not to feel controlled by. To feel empowered rather than controlled. So what happens with the scale is, depending on our relationship to the scale, it's become something that has a lot of power over us. So we might even have come to use the scale in a way that is like threatening or punitive or damaging or perfectionistic or like ruthless. So that isn't really what biofeedback was meant to be. For example, if I'm wearing one of those devices that tells me how my sleep was, then I have the education about how deeply I slept, and I have some information to give to my health provider or to myself, and I can make some adjustments about how I'm taking care of my sleep. Well, if I look at the scale as biofeedback, I can use it as information about what I'm learning about my body and how it's responding to daily life. For example, sometimes the scale, we can use it as a way to say, do I have a food sensitivity? For example, if you eat a certain food, sometimes your scale will actually change by a pound or 2 or 3 or 4, and that could tell you that you have an inflammatory response to a certain food. It's called a histamine reaction. But to use the scale in this way, we have to have a relationship with it that's actually empowering and educational. And for most of my students in Hunger, Hope, and Healing, including myself decades ago, the scale wasn't an educational, empowering support. It was something where we came to be measuring ourselves at a very deep level, as if we were measuring our worth, like measuring our sense of worthiness or okayness or goodness as a person, based on what the scale was saying. So for some of my yoga students in Hunger, Hope, and Healing, the way that they became connected to or related to their scale was they would use it to control their weight. I thought I was doing the same. I was going to control my weight, because if I checked my weight every morning or several times a day, I was going to somehow keep it under control, that the scale would tell me if I was okay, if I had broken the boundaries of my routine or my regime, because it really was more of a regime than a routine. The scale used in this way to say, I'm going to control my body weight by measuring myself every day and seeing if I'm kind of going off the charts or if I'm staying within reason. And yet sometimes staying within reason was actually like, I'm having this incredible judgmental like panel of judges and critics. And if the scale went off, we found ourselves collapsing to what the scale was saying. The scale as a means to control our weight is not very effective. Because we don't weigh the same thing every day. It does fluctuate very slightly. And yet we can become heavily preoccupied with what it is saying down to the ounces. And we can feel elated when it says what we want it to say, or the needle's going in the direction we're hoping it's going to go. We can feel totally despondent when it's going the other way. We can even, I don't know if you've done this, but I had done this as well. When we think of the scale as how am I going to control my weight, we can even find we have a scale in our home. We go to somebody else's home, there's a scale, we check that scale too. How am I doing on this scale? We go to the gym, we check on that scale. We go here and there measuring ourselves to see, am I going to be okay? And truly what is underneath that is a felt sense of anxiety about our okayness. It's an anxiety about our sense of worthiness or our place of belonging. It has become something where the confines of belonging or okayness has become very small. We have to fit into a certain size or a certain measurement on the scale. So that's one way that women have used the scale in Hunger, Hope, and Healing. Another way is that they get on the scale knowing that it's going to say something that they're disappointed about, and then that disappointment is going to motivate them. Except that what happens is the disappointment is actually shame, and then we're trying to motivate ourselves with shame, which fundamentally can't work, because shame is not a source of motivation. Shame is preventative. It's a disempowering, immobilizing neurological reflex. But if I get on the scale to get angry enough at myself, at what it says, because I'm going to motivate from shame and anger, then I'm going to be motivated to do something from shame and anger. And that's not going to be very sustainable. In fact, it's going to be kind of breakable, because I don't really want to be motivated by shame or anger. And if it feels like that's what I need to be motivated, underneath there, like with the first form, I said there's a kind of underlying felt sense of anxiety. If I need anger and shame to motivate me, there's an underlying inner sense of vacancy. I don't know where my own leadership is. I don't know where my inner sort of pilot is. I don't know how to compass myself. And so my compass might be these internalized voices that I got from other people when I was in my developing years, and they used shame or anger, disapproval or criticism to motivate me. They might have used threat or punishment to motivate me. And then I'm adopting those, potentially without realizing that I've done that. I'm adopting those inside, and I think I'm going to motivate myself to take better care of myself. The difficulty with that is that if the ways that we were motivated, which was actually coerced and or threatened or sometimes punished, if that came through shame and anger and criticism from others, and now I'm trying to do that, I'm further squashing the part of me that had to kind of go into hiding when that was the motivating forces that I lived with in early life. The part that had to go into hiding was the part that couldn't bear the pain of being chastised, condemned, criticized, scolded, threatened, coerced, punished to do the right thing. That's not a very good parenting style, but some of our care environments in Hunger, Hope, and Healing, and I've been doing this for more than 25 years, so some of the care environments that we were a part of, that was one of the parenting styles. It's a misunderstanding of parenting, but it happened. And so the part of us that experienced that as very painful kind of had to go into hiding because it couldn't bear the pain of staying in that kind of environment. And yet we lived in that environment, or we were beholden to that environment because it was housing and clothing us for a time. And one way we can go into hiding is to eat to numb that pain. We can take in more food to quiet down how the brain and body are responding to that pain. Another way to do it is to decide that we're going to have some control somewhere in our life, and that control is going to be what I eat and how I eat. I'm going to go on a diet. I'm going to get myself under control. Because it turns out actually that the diet industry is borrowing some of the worst parenting that we have received. It's borrowing those same mechanisms, and it can have this insidious, familiar enough, convincing seduction. So I might decide I'm going to go on a diet because I'm going to get myself under control, and I'm going to organize myself so that those shaming, angry voices, those critical, condescending voices, they won't have anything to hang on. They can't attach themselves to me because I'm going to get myself perfected. I'm going to get myself to be that which they can't criticize. I'm going to become the thing that they can't condemn. And I'm going to work really hard at that. In fact, I might even adopt an attitude of perfectionism. And I'm going to strive for that so that I can get out of the kind of torrent of that pain. Except that, again, that motivation is coming from a couple misunderstandings. One is shame and anger are trying to motivate. I'm going to get this under control. Control is actually impossible because our bodies are an ever-changing organism, and they need our leadership, our attention, our kindness, our nourishment. They need us to feel empowered and in relationship with them. Trying to control the body is a hierarchy. It's a kind of oppression over certain functions of the body. And trying to control the body when it comes to food and dieting is like trying to oppress or control your appetite. And there is an animal body in here that will have a rebellion against that. In fact, the research shows that the more we diet, the more we rebel. So women can lose a lot of weight dieting, and they tend to, based on research, gain back more than they lost. And that will happen again and again. That's called yo-yo dieting. But another flaw in that idea about I'm going to go on this diet and get myself finally to be the thing that this critical environment can't criticize is that the critical environment is a habit too. It's intrinsic in those people. It's become internalized for the critics. And then we internalized it. So we get this kind of, it's never good enough. Even if we reach our goal, and this has happened a lot, women in Hunger, Hope, and Healing have said to me, I reached my goal and it wasn't good enough. I had to keep going. I had to keep going with this diet, or I reached a certain goal in my fitness, but it wasn't enough. It had this kind of ever elusive, not good enough experience, because that is the matrix that we developed in response to certain kinds of conditioning as we were growing up. So you can see there's some problems in that system, in those ways of thinking. And we can't really get out of it by using that same kind of thinking. So what also happens if we are numbing the pain with excess food and kind of we're sedating ourselves, or we're trying to just check out of the noise or the emotional pain, or we don't have the support we need for understanding our emotions, so we're using food and other distractions, or we're using dieting and compulsive exercising, what's also occurring is that our endocrine system, our metabolic system, our digestive system, it's all changing. It's being influenced by the biochemistry of that stress. And so then we want to see the diet work, we want to see the exercise work, and yet we may have very high cortisol levels and low digestive strength. We call it an Ayurveda digestive strength. We're doing everything that we know to do, everything we've been told to do, and the scale's not moving, or it's not moving in the right direction. And the scale has now become public enemy number one. We hate it. And it's, why are we working so hard and not getting results? So then we look at the scale and we think, let me try harder, because that's also part of what we internalized in a parenting field or a care providing field, where if there was criticism, we thought we could try harder and finally overcome it. But even the A's weren't good enough, right? In my case, even having really good high scores in school, it wasn't enough. The feeling of never being enough was not solved by that. And in some cases, getting the scale to say what you thought you wanted to say is now not good enough. And here you've got this biochemical soup going on. We work extra hard and the scale's not moving. And if we were measuring our success, our confidence, our worth, our personhood on the scale, now our emotional landscape is being demoralized. So that becomes more and more anxiety producing and depressing, and also confusing. And then we're more susceptible to the next diet plan that comes around in the marketing and the conditioning of what we see around us. So what we recommend in Hunger, Hope, and Healing is actually a change of perspective, where we can consider how to free ourselves from that which is actually damaging us. First, we have to sense that we've adopted a matrix that we never meant to have it become so overgrown. We didn't mean for it to take over our lives. We didn't mean for it to become like it's controlling us. We thought we were just going to get a little bit more control in our life somewhere, for example. We never meant for food to have more power over us than we do over it. We didn't mean for the scale to be like we're white knuckling getting on or off. We didn't intend or plan for our life to feel this kind of controlled by the numbers. So first we have to kind of go back in time and realize that there was an innocent effort to get out of pain, and it made a matrix that then took on its own life. And society and conditioning and diet industry and beauty industry and fitness industry and fashion industry, they all feed into that matrix because they know how to. I mean, they are encouraged to step into those matrices with us because it sells them more products, right? So then we're trying to go to a diet or to the scale or to something for reassurance, but we're moving to it from a place that feels more fragile. So where we recommend in Hunger, Hope, and Healing, getting some nourishment, getting some baseline established, is rather than using the scale to measure our worth, we actually recommend putting the scale aside. I mean, I've had women in the program over many years, now decades. Some women have given their scale away. Some have locked it in the closet. So I had a couple women take a baseball bat to their scale because it felt very liberating to them to get out of the torrent of the scale. I've had some women put their scale in their trunk for a few months and not use it. But that can ultimately be something that's also very scary to say, am I actually going to put aside the one thing that is telling me if I'm okay or not every day? So we have to find something else that gives us that sense of okayness, that inner sense of worthiness and relief. So where we start is coming into the breath and the body with yoga. And that might seem very simple and maybe too simple, but all the stress that we built up is in the musculoskeletal system. It's also in the nervous system. It's running the neurological roadmaps within us. It's in our brain chemistry. It becomes part of your endocrine system. So it's all like feeders, as if all these roads into a city where we have this massive congestion and we can't really think clearly, feel clearly, or digest or find our vitality clearly. So we come into yoga practice to start saying yes to this indwelling body intelligence, because it is actually still in there. And I'm saying this after 25 years of working with women and also my own recovery, that body intelligence is actually still in there, and it wants to work for you. It wants to actually digest your food and cleanse your hormones and revive your lymph system and improve your posture and let you breathe and let you become free from the oppressive matrix that we adopted. So while we start with yoga, we start with a specific approach to yoga using more mindfulness and consideration for the body. We also start with something called the body dashboard, which is it's like a little panel. You can think of it in your iPhone. I didn't know this was going to come out as an iPhone many years later after making the body dashboard. Those little icons they have on the phone and little squares, you could picture your body dashboard as a set of little squares designed. And the body dashboard starts with hydration. This might seem way too simple, but hang with me for a moment and then I'll see what your questions are. So let me talk about hydration, but I'll tell you the other 6 things and then I'll come back to hydration. So on your body dashboard are 7, I got to count my fingers. There are 7 key items for your basic daily well-being. Hydration, having appropriate deep rest, like the sleep that you get at night, keeping your blood sugar balanced. So having proper nourishment where your blood sugar is not going up and down erratically, because that wears your system out much faster and confuses your endocrine system. So hydration, sleep, nourishment, or blood sugar. Every day, raising your heart rate to have some, what I call cleaning of the pipes, right? To get the yayas out. So cleansing your respiration and lymph system by raising your heart rate every day. Getting into nature, number 5, having an experience of nature every day. In fact, you are nature itself. It's not just the plants and the forest and the rivers and the oceans. We are also nature. And then having daily access to some kind of right brain activity, like nourishing your right brain, because having balance between the right and left hemispheres of the brain is really essential for what we call your whole brain recovery. And the right brain is mostly, people historically felt some sort of fear about the right brain. It used to be considered the realm of like feeling morose or heavier or more heavy emotions. And then the left brain was prioritized because it was more upbeat, it was more logical, more linear. But your right brain is also where you access awe, empathy, wonder, timelessness, a sense of being immersed in all that is. So being able to have right brain activities every day is going to give you a sense of that belonging that you're called to in this very spiritual way. And number 7 on the body dashboard is called elimination. And that refers to the obvious, so peeing and so on, but also elimination is sweating, laughing, crying. every day. And that can sound like a lot to do. So we start with hydration. Let me talk again about why. And what I want you to hear and what I'm going to say is any activity that we commit to that's going to support our body intelligence, we are building the muscle of the commitment before we add the next one and the next one. So if I learn how to be in relationship with myself, if you learn how to be in relationship with yourself, with hydration, you can be in relationship with yourself, with your sleep schedule, with your blood sugar, with your exercise, and so on. So hydration means that I make a commitment to myself several times a day to drink water. How much water do we need? It's about, I think it's, what do they say? 8 ounces of water based on our body weight. It's some percentage. In any case, I'll have to look it up for you and put it in the notes from this video. So let's say I make this commitment to hydration. I am immediately going to see how many times do I forget? How many times do I find hydrating inconvenient? How many times is my water bottle empty? Or I took it with me, but I left it in the car. I went to the meeting, but I left it at my desk. I was going to hydrate, but I forgot to do it because somebody made a phone call to me and I got distracted. How many times a day are we forgetting to hydrate? Right? And that is one indicator. How many times a day am I forgetting myself? And just my basic needs. How many times a day am I forgetting myself and my basic needs? The second thing that can happen is it feels inconvenient. I have to go back and get my water bottle. Who am I inconveniencing? Other people. Am I keeping them waiting? Are they getting annoyed with me? Am I a distraction? These are questions we get to ask ourselves. How do I feel that I'm being inconvenienced to others? Like how do I interpret myself as an inconvenience to them? Where does that come from? My basic needs are an inconvenience to others. How did I come to that perspective? So we get to start asking those questions, and that really goes to like our developmental years. How are my needs an inconvenience to others? And what does it mean to cause a delay for somebody else that I have to go back and get my water bottle? What does it mean to cause a pause in a meeting to say, well, I have to go to take a bathroom break? Right. This is the other thing that I get from women is a complaint that if they hydrate, they have to go pee more often, which is true. That's how your body is cleansing you. That is one of the really essential cleansings that we do every day, and we do it quite naturally. Now I get to ask, do I feel embarrassed about my body functions? And when did I learn to be embarrassed about the basic functions of my body? A third thing that can happen that we look at with hydration, so we have how many times a day do I forget myself? Do I interpret myself as an inconvenience to others? Am I embarrassed about my body functions? And the third thing that can happen is, as I'm hydrating, if I think of this as an act of self-respect, what begins to change? As I'm hydrating, it's an act of self-respect. What begins to change when I take this in and I say to myself, I am hydrating for my digestion, for my brain, my joints, my organs, for, in fact, your digestive tract needs to be hydrated to work better for you. Your brain relies on hydration. Your joints, your tissues, your organs are relying on hydration. Chronic symptoms of dehydration include things like brain fog and headaches and fatigue, constipation, digestive difficulties, changes in your hormones, joint pain. By the way, joint pain, one of the ways to think about that is if you're dehydrated, your body has to go out to the periphery, out to the joints, the hands, feet, elbows, knees, hips, shoulders, and take water from there to give it to the organs. Because your body can't risk having the organs get dehydrated. It doesn't start with the organs, it starts dehydrating your joints. So if you have joint pain, if you have chronic inflammation, you might be chronically dehydrated. So if you think about the gesture of hydration as a sign of self-respect, and you think about it every time that you're sipping water, let's put that up against every time I stepped on the scale to check if I was an okay person. Those are very different attitudes. On the one hand, I'm practicing self-respect every time I drink the water. We might even add to that a mantra, like you drink your water and you say to yourself, my basic needs matter. My needs matter. You could even say, I matter, right? And the opposite of that, stepping on the scale, we're saying, will I be okay? What is it going to read? Am I going to survive? Will I collapse or will I celebrate? So each day we have only so much time for certain influences. If you think about, it's kind of hard to listen to 2 YouTube channels at once. You got to choose one of them. It's like this with your thoughts. It's hard to choose 2 thoughts, competing thoughts at once. You basically have to choose one of them. And I'm recommending you choose the one that's like, this is an act of self-respect. This is a chance for me to express to myself that my basic needs matter. I am not an inconvenience. My body is not an inconvenience. I get to matter to myself. My health, brain, body, digestion, it all matters to me. And it's within my reach to hydrate. So at the same time that you're doing that, you're saying no to the oppressive forces of the matrix that you internalized. So let me say one more thing, and then I'll find out where your questions are lying. So I was suggesting that if we take one of the body dashboard items and we apply it to our life, we're learning all the skills that go for the next action and the next action. And it does become scaffolded like that, in the same way that we took in like one painful belief about ourselves, and it led to the next one and the next one and the next one. So our minds have this process of extrapolating. And what happened with a painful belief and another painful belief and another one is we learned to live our life from shame. In recovery, in Hunger, Hope, and Healing, we're learning about moving from love, not shame. And love includes the qualities of self-respect, self-tenderness, and self-kindness. So because your brain is prone to extrapolating, let's use that to our betterment, our advantage. And we're going to extrapolate that when I sip my water, I remember myself. And I remember that I matter. And that this matters to my health, my brain health, my emotional health, my physical health, digestive health, all of these things. So on that note, let me find out if you have some questions, which you can either put into the chat, or you are welcome to unmute and ask me a question. You can vocalize it if you'd like to. We have about 10 more minutes to be together, and I would be glad to find out what I'm stimulating and what questions you're living with. Let's see if you can get that. Yeah. Are you looking for your mute button? It happens that way sometimes. Yeah.
You're a joy.
Hi.
It's great to see you.
You too.
Everything resonates so deeply. I don't know. I understand I'm being recorded, right?
You are being recorded for the benefit of others who can't be here and might ask the same question you're asking, or for others who haven't thought of their questions yet, and your question might be one of theirs.
Yeah, I think it's just so interesting because it really does dive deep into our systems, and like growing up and our family systems. And I had a big aha while you were speaking because as a kid, I was never shamed for being overweight. I can't say never. I mean, there were some comments by one of my parents, but my primary parent, who was my mother, always rewarded me for being kind of pudgy. It was like a desirable thing, and so in my adult years, as I have done some of the practices that you're sharing about really taking care of myself, and some of it probably went to extreme and was more restrictive and not necessarily so healthy. A couple years ago, I was completely against sugar and flour. And so I just didn't eat sugar and flour. I was one of, and so I lost weight. And I remember my mother at the time, there's just a tone that our mothers use that, how much do you weigh? How much do you actually weigh? What size are you? And a lot of emphasis on that there was actually, dissatisfaction with my changing the status quo. The status quo was that I carried a little bit of extra weight just like she did. And when I stepped away from that, it became, undesirable. And I just had an aha, and I don't know if that's appropriate to share but
Absolutely.
It is really helpful because, I grew up with a sister and a mother. My father left. And so the 3 of us were this unit. And there were always those messages of, so and so is too thin, or and that kind of stuff, which is just as damaging, of course, as being criticized for you don't fit in your size such and such anymore, or those sorts of things.
Mhm.
I don't
Yes.
know. I wanted just to comment on that. And then I do have a question, like I listened to your body, what do you called it, the body dashboard, which I think is
Yeah.
brilliant. Um, and what I'm finding is I do a lot of these things, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I meditate, I eat well, I take care of myself. I probably, the hydration piece, I drink tea probably more than I should probably drink water more than
Mhm.
herbal teas and such. But there's this menopausal kind of place that it really is like the scale just doesn't budge. So
Mhm.
I've kind of, pushed my scale away for the past couple weeks, just like
Mhm.
I'm just, because I'm got an aversion to it. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's tricky. Like, what if you are doing these things? I sweat daily. I walk. I do all
Mhm.
these things, but my body's just kind of wanting to be right where it is, I think. And I
Mhm.
don't know what to do with that.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So interesting. First, let me say what a precious insight you had about when your body composition changed and a previous like allegiance between you and your mom, really from her to you, that allegiance kind of got disrupted because your body composition changed. And the story had been you're like a little carrying a few extra pounds. And now the narrative changes. When she's made uncomfortable by that, what we call in Hunger, Hope, and Healing, we say that that is a relationship that hasn't yet differentiated. She didn't
Right.
allow you to individuate, and she
Mhm.
didn't know how to allow that. She herself may not have gotten to individuate. So, in that regard, it's something really wonderful to have that insight because now you can look at all the ways in which you might not have individuation or differentiation in your family system and in you. Since you can't do her individuation for her, you have to do it for yourself. And that is something that also extrapolates into our life. Like, where else am I not individuated? I don't see myself as a sovereign person who's capable of collaboration. I see myself only as a part of a system, and I have to keep that system kind of balanced because it's meeting my needs, and I'm meeting needs for others to help get needs met for me. So that is another layer of the matrix that we study in Hunger, Hope, and Healing. What does differentiation mean? What is it to be individuated? And there's a lot of talk in like the diet industry about being like having your forces of strength up against things, your like your steel reserves and so on. We don't have this attitude in Hunger, Hope, and Healing. When you're individuated, you get to have really clear and loving boundaries. You don't need a steel trap. You don't need the kind of like kryptonite against things because individuation is that kind of superpower. We're able to see ourselves with this enormous compassion and to see others with that compassion too. We're less manipulatable by them, and we are less inclined to appease or acquiesce in certain circumstances. So what you had there as an insight, Jenny, is really powerful. And I wanted to just give that a bouquet, kind of like let that fan open into more parts of your life too.
Mm.
Now, on the scale and the weight and the body dashboard, I'd have to ask you, I have two questions for you. One is, what do you imagine is the level of stress or cortisol in your body? Even as you're doing these wonderful things for yourself, is there like a structure of stress somewhere in your life that's also feeding you right now where you're nodding your head?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it so?
Oh, absolutely. There's been the pandemic has been extremely hard on my family.
Mhm.
And so the weight gain that has brought me to you right now is all pandemic related. Pre-pandemic, even though I was restricting, I was kind of comfortable with it. My,
Mhm.
my food, as they say in so many of the programs, it just didn't bother me. I didn't feel at risk of any kind of binging. I wasn't starving myself. Everything was pretty good, and I felt like those boundaries. And I would go home back east and have the comments from, my family of origin,
Yes.
what size are you? What do you actually weigh? What size are, those sorts of things.
You've changed.
And
You're different. Who are you in
yeah,
relation to us? What's happening to you?
we don't like this. You're disrupting things. And even it's really great that you bring up boundaries, because I think I was expressing those boundaries and they're not comfortable with that either,
Mhm.
but truly, God bless them. I don't mean to, they're really enmeshed, and it's just how we always were, but I'm the one who moved away. But I had everything, I think, maybe in retrospect, controlled, like some of the language, like kind of keeping my my food controlled or whatever, but it didn't feel like unhealthy restriction. It felt like I was caring for myself. And then when the pandemic hit, I'm raising 3 young people, all two middle schoolers and a high schooler. It became really stressful, and I won't go into all of that,
Mhm.
but I know that it's my stress and my cortisol,
Yeah.
um, because I could not keep it in check. My sleep suddenly changed. I always have been a good sleeper, and now it's like I wear one of the trackers,
Mhm.
and I'm always thinking, okay, how was last night,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. So I do think that stress plays a part, and I would like less stress around, all of the, I don't know what you're bringing
Yeah.
up around the scale, for example. It does take away stress putting the scale away.
Mhm.
I don't have that anxiety of, how I'm going to feel when I step on it, what I'm going to
Mhm.
see.
Mhm. Yeah. So this question about stress, you've answered it really thoroughly, which I greatly appreciate. And so you have several layers of stress there. One is that as you go to the East Coast, I think,
Yes.
to
Mhm.
care for your family, and then you're coming back to care for the children that you're raising, the people that you're raising, as you said. There's a lot of layers of stress there, including travel during the pandemic. But one of the most profound forms of stress is the historical enmeshment, the historical belief systems that are there waiting for you when you go. And one way that people differentiate in early life is they move away. Like if we go far away, we're differentiated because they can't see us every day or make contact every single day. So when you're going back, you're probably touching some of that which is still enmeshed, and you're still vulnerable to it, understandably, especially with the pandemic. And if your parents are aging and your little ones are growing, you may be having adolescence and later life issues both pulling at you at the same time. We call that the sandwich generation, by the way. You're in the sandwich generation. So those stressors, we can't discount the influence of that on your cortisol and your experience of menopause. It will be influencing your sense of tranquility, your sleep, your vitality, all these things. So this is where the body dashboard is very effective, but doing it from having a yoga practice to cultivate the sort of physiological best version of yourself, then every body dashboard activity is done with love. It's not pressured. There's no sense that we have to do it or else we're kind of breakable. And when we're stressed at a certain level, it'll feel like even our best life habits, we have to do them or we're kind of breakable. The stress rises at a certain threshold, and it feels like if we don't do the things that are normally health giving, if we don't do them, now they become like pressured, we're kind of fragile, the threshold is going up, we could at any moment collapse, we can't afford to collapse, you're raising children on one side and caring for parents on the other side. Am I getting a sense of that okay?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, so having a way to pull in your own root tendrils and to get Jenny centered in Jenny again. I know that the wisest part of you knows this, because if people actually are depending on you to care for them as they age and raise them as they're young, they need the version of you that's going to be there long term.
Mhm.
And the version that can be there while they're doing their stressful emotional things and not taking it personally is going to be so much better for you, but a near impossibility when we're in enmeshed family systems. So the yoga helps with that tremendously, particularly because of how it shifts us physiologically. So you go from something like stress hormones to endorphins. You go from the stress biochemistry of adrenaline, you get some oxytocin, feels a lot better. You have the neurotransmitters of love and compassion. versus the neurotransmitters and the biochemistry of stress and angst and conflict. So having that as a specific kind of practice is really helpful. And then how you approach hydration or any of the other body dashboard items is going to be from this quiet, loving sense of care for yourself and not letting it get stolen away by something else. So you're not postponing hydration or peeing or blood sugar balancing. And it's going to be difficult, Jenny, because you probably have boundaries to clear up in a number of places in your life that are going to influence others, might upset them. I mean, if your body composition is changing and that upsets somebody else, a boundary is probably a higher bar than that one. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, you did say, what can I do about these extra pounds that I'm carrying? What might I do? And I could hear in your voice tone that one option is to accept it as it is. And a loving acceptance of ourselves is wonderful. But you could also, Jenny, take it as biofeedback. Like your body is giving you biofeedback that there's a level of stress, that it's holding on to hormones and extra weight. So the biofeedback, like if you woke up one morning and you had edema, that would be biofeedback. If you woke up with a rash, it's biofeedback. If you wake up with a headache, that's biofeedback. The scale is biofeedback too, but it's an external form. These other ones are symptoms within us. So if we're gaining weight in certain parts of the body, like often around the middle, we can imagine that that's cortisol and our hormones are changing. We aren't beholden to become the postmenopausal 15 extra pounds version of ourselves. That's become normalized. We don't actually have to have insomnia and hot flashes with menopause. That's also become normalized. But those aren't signs of health. In a Western view, they don't consider that to be out of the norm because it's in that bell curve. But Ayurveda would say we don't have to have those symptoms to go through menopause. I feel very fortunate that my menopause has not included insomnia or hot flashes. I think that they're both very hard to live with. You're having changes with your sleep. That's also biofeedback. So all that feedback from your body is feedback about the circumstances of your life currently.
Mm-hmm.
Now, rather than making any drastic changes for who you're caring for on either side of the sandwich, as it were, my first recommendation is that we get you kind of centered in yoga and also in a supportive community. So that's why we have Hunger, Hope, and Healing. If you have that surround sound support, it's easier to nourish and then make the changes, make the decisions. What can happen frequently is I know what I have to do. I'm not really in my resilience to do it, but I do it. They push back. I collapse. I don't do it. It didn't work out. I already tried that, Sarah Joy. It didn't work out. But did we try it from a place of resilience, care, and confidence? And did we withstand the first arrow that came when we said, I've got a boundary to set? Did we withstand that? Or did we collapse to it? What happened with the second effort? Because one effort is usually not enough in a family system, as you might know, of course. How are you responding, Jenny? What's happening as I say these things?
Oh, they all just ring so true. I mean, it makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's good to hear. It's just, I just feel like you understand, what you really have a deep understanding of it.
I've lived many of these things and I've been with women in this work for 25 years now. So I appreciate your giving me that reflection because I do feel very intimate to it. And it is my intention to convey that I understand. And not only that I understand, but there's also relief available. There's lasting transformation that's possible.
Could you tell me a little bit more about actually Hunger, Hope, and Healing? When you do join, is it, that one thing that's kind of confusing sometimes, is it a 16-week program? Is it a year long? Is it just a community that then you tap into? I understand you'll probably have modules like the body dashboard.
Yeah, those are great questions.
Do the modules end and then it's just a supportive community that then, might be a part of your yoga studio and taking classes and connecting in groups periodically?
Yeah, so the format is currently, you can sign up anytime to join Hunger, Hope, and Healing. So we just updated that format. And the first 16 weeks are pretty structured so that I can give you the new infrastructure that is going to get you out of the old matrix and into your body intelligence and your heart intelligence and your life intelligence. And what I've seen over many years is that that does take about 16 weeks to establish that arc. The needle on your radar screen has moved. You are pointing north on your compass as you're meant to be pointing. So that's called phase 1 for 16 weeks. And that includes weekly group support calls, a weekly yoga class, the online information, but also daily tea time. So you have regular contact, live contact like this, regular support like this. And the other group members are also in the group support call. So you get to hear their questions and how I'm responding to them, hopefully with the same care and intelligence that I'm responding to you right now. That's always my intention. And as that 16 weeks comes to an end, then you move into what's called phase 2. In phase 2, you've accomplished what we call your on-ramp to recovery. You are on the freeway now. So you were on the on-ramp, you were not in the weeds, you're not in the bicycle lane, you didn't have a breakdown. You're up on the higher ground now for your recovery. And then we call this your 360-degree full spectrum recovery. So in phase 2, you still have weekly support calls. In fact, we have them twice a week, still have yoga class, tea time, and we work through the developmental model of the chakras from yoga alongside of a Western developmental model. And you can look back and see where are the arcs of trauma that have impeded your development, according to the chakras and also according to Erickson's model, Robert Keegan's model. And looking at that from a place of greater recovery, there's no sense of shame. There is a great sense of discovery. And we find out where our weaker muscles are, what we have to strengthen, as it were. And that full spectrum recovery, women stay in, often they stay for many months, up to a year. Sometimes they stay for 2 or 3 years because the recovery is so helpful to them and it becomes their ongoing support community. I recommend that women stay after 16 weeks of phase 1, that it's about an 8-month arc to feel really established, that you can't slide backwards and that you're only going forward with your life. So that's called the on-ramp to recovery, and then your full spectrum recovery is in phase 2. Does that help to clarify?
That does, yeah, thanks, yeah.
You're welcome. Yeah, we've been doing Hunger, Hope, and Healing now. I say we because I'm including all the women whose influence keeps developing what's so great about the program. It's been going for 22 years, I think. Yeah, about 22 years now. And I just love offering the program and meeting women and helping them really see that shame is not their essence. Shame is not your essence, nor is it mine. And that we had this very sad, difficult misunderstanding, but our true self is still available. Our body intelligence is still there, and there is recovery to be found. Freedom is possible, as I like to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any other questions for today?
I don't think so, no. Thank you so much. This has been really helpful. And I have your book, which is very good.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really glad you came in and you're willing to unmute. Women don't always have to unmute in these conversations and talk with me, but it's really very helpful when somebody does. I know that everybody else appreciates that because it makes a conversation that perhaps their voice can't come forward right now, but their ears and their hearts and bodies are hearing our exchange. So
Good.
Thank you for that too. Okay, we'll sign off here, and I look forward to seeing you for our next conversation or in any other setting that I get to be with you. So
Thank you so much.
thank you. Please take care.
You too, thanks.
Mhm.